So again, sorry about that. My video cut short, and I don't know why. But we just have two more slides here on this presentation. So the second to last is bullying. So this is definitely a tough topic to discuss with anyone who has a child involved with bullying, whose child is being accused of bullying. And when we talk about bullying, what specifically we mean is an intentional and repetitive mistreatment or intentional or repetitive acts of mistreatment. And there's often an imbalance of power in those situations. So a student or child who is in a position of power, or an adult for that matter, intentionally and repetitively mistreating another who is in a position of lower power or perceived power. And forms of bullying can range from direct physical bullying through verbal bullying like taunting or teasing, terrorizing, and all the way through for more recently, of course, cyberbullying would be involved in that, or potentially involved in that. The effects of the students can range quite largely. They can begin thinking pretty negatively about themselves. They can be very fearful of the place where they are bullied. School is often a place that happens. They can develop social habits or patterns of maladaptation, so they can not fit in or not feel like they fit in, and that can set a tone for their school experience leading into the future. So there are ways of kind of pointing or high-risk indicators. That's what I'm looking for. High-risk indicators or signs of bullying can range a good bit too. So watching children who may be experiencing bullying in their own lives might be in the form of avoidant behaviors like staying away from everyone, making long trips around where they're going to avoid certain groups of people or avoid people altogether. And it's also important to remember that bullies themselves are very often the targets of bullying from others. Hurt people, as they say, and that's definitely true with bullying experiences too. The way to support those who are involved in bullying very successfully can often involve a school-wide program, or at least school-wide perspectives or attitudes toward bullying. So there's a program called Olveus. It's spelled with a W, but it's pronounced with a V. Olveus is a school-wide anti-bullying program, which is a popular one, and that trickles down into the classroom from the school level through just explicit classrooms about bullying. In addition to that, you, the professional, if you come across an experience where you're observing bullying or suspect it, your response to it would be a really significant way of teaching others about how to handle it themselves. So kind of learning by example. In communicating with parents, emotion will understandably likely be very high. If they feel like they're sending their child into a school and they're being mistreated, or if they feel that the child is being accused of being bullied, practicing the skills of self-awareness and self-communication we've discussed in this class, for instance, would be really important during that time, because they may be coming at you with a lot of emotion, and you'll have to deal with it in a skillful and professional way. So that's just something to be on alert for. Okay, lastly, school crisis. So there are times, unfortunately, when at a facility where children are being watched after, taught, and cared for, that pretty tragic or major things may occur. And it might be useful to consider there being 4 types of crisis in a school or a child care setting. So death of an individual, that means that there's somehow a death on the campus itself, or a death of an individual who frequents the campus so that they won't be there anymore. Major environmental crisis, of course that's like hurricane or tornado or something. Physical threats like intruders, and emotional threats, which may also involve intruders, but of a less violent type. So emotional threats can also be like hate-filled language or not violent but hate-filled demonstrations, things like that. With response and communication during times of crisis, what's most important is setting or there being set structures of response. And modes of communication within those structures should be very well laid out. How are we going to talk to each other in the building? How are we going to talk to or relay information outside of the building to even news outlets and also, of course, parents or family members? Establishing the resources of what's going to be used during a school crisis. That means just like walkie-talkies and things like that. And also establishing roles. Like, so if something happens, what are you, the individual professional, going to do? What role are you going to fill? And in communicating through different crisis experiences, those roles could will overlap with the communication strategies. So there is going to be a lot of obviously important communication with parents during as soon as the crisis happens or as soon as possible, and then how to recover from the crisis itself will be something that will unfold over time, and communication with parents during those processes are going to be really important to maintain consistent and open channels to do so. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about different difficult topics today. You can take a look on Blackboard for a couple of assignments, and then I'll be seeing you face-to-face next Thursday for our final meeting, during which we'll go through the family involvement and communication plan. And if you have any questions about, clarifying questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. But I'll have some information on Blackboard, and there's also information about it on the syllabus as well. It'll be pretty similar to what I had anticipated doing face-to-face. We'll just obviously be virtual in doing that, so we'll just imagine that this quarantine is really happening during the role-playing exercise, and we're just on this video conference instead of person-to-person. So reach out to me with any questions, but there's good bit of information on what you'll be expected to do on our final class next week.